We gather during Advent in the traditions of faith, hope, love, and joy. And on this third Sunday, we focus on that love which transcends the ego's desire for affirmation and uses faith and hope to move powerfully towards what the Greeks call agape, the love that indeed would include knowledge, care, charity, and fullness of heart for all peoples. So in this, may we point our hearts and risk ourselves for this kind of embracing love, the love that embraces the refugee, even the enemy. Let us use the substance of that which is hoped for, our faith, to act in the world such that we might realize a love larger than ourselves. And so in this spirit, we now invite Leela Penny to light the candle of love.
Good morning. If I could invite you all to please join me in the responsive reading. Love cannot remain by itself. And if this is so, then we are called together.
For this is what love does. Love gathers people.
Each of us, no matter our circumstances, has been given a portion of love.
Let us be known by how fully we have shared our portion.
Good morning. Can never hear that enough in here, and welcome to Fountain Street Church. My name is Ginger Hensley, and I have been a member of this wonderful, wonderful church for 1, 2, 3+ decades. And I'm very proud of that. Church is not part of traditionally who I was. I grew up in the southernmost part of Illinois. And in my small town, you truly could walk a couple of blocks and there was a church. Perhaps they were not traditional in style or looks or worship practices, but they were there. And there was one Catholic church in our county for diversity's sake. I know. And of course, there were the Methodists, the Baptists, the snake handlers, and those who spoke in tongue. They were ever present as well. And I might add that the latter was quite enticing to 7-year-old me. Now, my family, we didn't grow up with a typical Sunday worship practice. Our neighbors did, every single one of them. The Hensleys were not the norm. We weren't even close. It's not that there were no religious beliefs for us to fall upon. My dad had very strong religious beliefs, having spent 5 years of his formative years in an orphanage. And my mother, Mama, on the other hand, she dismissed traditional organized religion as hypocritical and completely unfounded scientifically. Sounds like someone we know that used to be in this pulpit, doesn't it? So if you wanted to go to church, You got your own self up, and you got your own self there. It was to be your journey. And life struggles in this small town from a fundamental evangelical perspective greeted me upon birth. And in my family, we did not regurgitate the views of so many, the norm. And so it was a good thing we moved north, right? But even in the move north, religion just still did not click with me until the early 80s. Until that day when I walked through those doors into our narthex and I muttered, "Oh my God." And I wasn't talking about the coffee, hadn't had a little sip of that church coffee yet. But there was something different here. The experience of the sermon, the music, all the various groups and the activities. This place touched my soul and my family's soul. I belonged. I found a place that I belonged. And I still do belong. And I love this place. Oh, do I love this place. I think my mother would have enjoyed Fountain Street. I know my dad would have. But most of all, this place has given me the grounding and the push for my religious journey and the continuing involving and growth of my passion for social justice. And importantly, this quest has touched my 3 daughters as well. They grew up in this church. They grew up every Sunday understanding the importance and the mission of reaching out beyond oneself. That, to me, is the core essence of what Fountain Street is. And so on this Sunday, when the offering will be received for the Choice Fund, I am literally giddy with excitement. You see, my father not only spent 5 long formative years in an orphanage, he understood all too well of every child being a wanted child. He went on, had quite a few careers, and became a doctor. And he was a pro-choice physician, oddly enough, on staff at a Catholic hospital. So back in the early 70s, little Ginger had choice was just not a right, it must be an option for every woman. So you will find that here in Fountain Street. We've had our Choice Fund for over 40 years. And you will also find here at Fountain Street that we ask you to give as generously as you can. Give in many ways. And you will find you are free to grow your soul, not just your knowledge, but your heart too. Free your mind, grow the soul, and for God's sake, please change the world. Please. This is Fountain Street. You belong here. And as Han Solo said to Chewie, we're home.
Just letting that settle in. The air got really all jumbled up there. Just letting it all take time. In case you don't know, this is a piece that that Jean, you've done before, and you brought it to share with us. So we're delighted to have another part of you as part of our experience today. Did you have fun, guys? Okay. Good. That's important. You really ought to have fun. That's really important. You may have recognized portions of the text. It's called for in today's lectionary for Protestant and even Catholic churches. It's from Luke, the gospel attributed there too. You see, what happens is that after Mary is told she's pregnant, she goes to visit her cousin, St. Anne, who is also pregnant with John the Baptist, according to the story. And the two pregnant women greet each other, and it's said that the babes in utero also greeted each other kind of, it's not more explicit than that. They just kind of happened. And after Anna greets her, it is Mary who is suddenly inspired to speak. And she uses words borrowed actually from 1 Samuel when Hannah is pregnant with the prophet Samuel. And it enlarges upon that. And it has now been set so many times that when you hear them, you probably hear either Bach or Pergolesi, somebody in your head. There are various versions of the poem, including one in our hymn book, which I'm going to read now. My soul magnifies God. We are enlarged. And my spirit breaks out, rejoicing in the face of freedom, that God, something now within yet not mine, has glanced at this daughter of hope. And behold, henceforth time will know and regard me. For that great mystery is a beam drawn through this lens, comforting me and all people, the shadows now dispersed. There is strength here like the sinew of a mother's arm. It shattles the brittle pride of wealth. It levels the clay-foot throne of tyrants. It upholds the forgotten, the scarred. Hunger, both body and soul, will be filled. Riches will no more be rewarded. The Holy One cleaves to those who keep faith. It will endure in those who serve mercy. And the promise made to legend ancestors will be kept. On December 14th of 2014, in the town of Texarkana, Texas, which is not the town of Texarkana, Arkansas, at around 2 a.m. in the 2700 block of Page Street in Texarkana, police were called to a burglary in progress there. An officer says the subject came toward him with a metal object. When he ordered him to stop, he didn't, and the officer shot 35-year-old Dennis Grigsby. He later died. An update in the story indicated that he was in a garage and was holding a wrench. The officer is on administrative leave. The Texas Rangers are investigating the incident. I read this story because a year later it's important to remember that all lives matter, but we need to know that black lives matter just as much. For a few years, I have used this Sunday to read a condensed version of How the Grinch Stole Christmas, because it says at the end, and his heart grew 3 sizes that day. It's a story of love. And I have a certified copy of the cover in my office, printed from the original, and I wear my black Santa cap like this. It says Bah Humbug on the front of it. And I decided not to do it this year, first of all, because it took a long time and I wanted to give the piece of music enough room to breathe. And second of all, because in the end, it was too cheerful. The news has made it harder to be merry, I think, for some of us this season. Yes, the weather has been warmer than usual, but I think the political outlook is very much chillier, and even the welcome warmth reminds us that the globe is warming and will probably not do good things for a few other people if we're not very deliberate about changing it. I read the biblical passages assigned for this weekend, both Jewish and Christian, and the message got even darker. The gospel for this week includes not only that passage, but one where John the Baptist comes into the crowd preaching and saying, I will baptize you with water, but one who is more powerful than I is coming. His winnowing fork is in his hand to clear the threshing floor and gather the wheat into his granary, but the chaff he will burn with unquenchable fire. Ho, ho, ho. Speaking of grain, over in the Jewish synagogues, all synagogues are Jewish, over in the Jewish readings, the Torah portion includes the story of Joseph, who now in Egypt has won the trust of Pharaoh because he has predicted 7 years of famine. So there's the grain again. And it says in that portion, in part, the famine grew severe in the land of Egypt, and Joseph laid open all that was within, presumably in some pyramids, and rationed out grain to the Egyptians. That was uncharitable, but I'm not always the nice guy I should be. The famine, however, spread over the whole world, it says in Torah, so all the world came to Joseph in Egypt to procure rations, for the famine had become severe throughout the world. Another cheerful story. The third Sunday in Advent at this church has been devoted to love for many years. It is the third of Paul's great spiritual trinity, faith, hope, and love. And I have sought this year to pair each of those Advent themes with the four ideals uttered every Sunday for almost half a century: dignity, meaning, worth, and joy. And yes, joy appears twice. This came to me as I pondered what else could possibly be said about Advent and Christmas. Even Ecclesiastes, old as he is, said at the time, there is nothing new under the sun, and this especially applies to preachers looking for things to say at Christmas time. It's all been said, it's all been done, you should just get up and leave. As ever, it is in moments of desperation that inspirations arrive. When you're about to throw up your hands, something falls into it, and that's when I thought that those words actually connected with each other. And as I said 2 weeks ago, faith is the word for trust. I want to thank Gary Eberly and others for indicating the roots of that in the Latin. And when we have trust in ourselves, when we have faith in ourselves, we understand the notion of dignity, that we have something to hang on to, that hope says that life matters, that it has meaning, and love is what makes life worth living. And joy, well, that is what we feel when those things connect in our hearts and minds, an exaltation. But as those who have been here know, that simple formula that I just gave you is neither simple nor easy nor really a formula. Liberal religion takes G.K. Chesterton seriously when he said, "The Christian ideal has not been tried and found wanting, it has been found difficult and left untried." There are no shortcuts to truth, no formulas for faith, no checklists to love, no manuals for joy. We must simply find them. Ours is a difficult path because it aspires to do these things without help, without easy steps, and to live them wherever they lead. With that warning in mind, I want you to consider a story from the first book of Kings. It's also called for in the Torah passages yesterday, and it struck me as a story of love. It says in chapter 3, "Please, my Lord, this woman and I live in the same house, and I gave birth to the child while she was in the house. This woman also gave birth to her child, and during the night this woman's child died because she lay upon it. So she arose and took my son while your maidservant was asleep. And when I arose in the morning to nurse my son, there he was dead. But when I looked at him closely in the morning, it was not the son I had born." The other woman said to the king, Solomon, "No, the live one is my son, and the dead one is yours." But the first insisted, "No, the dead boy is yours, and mine is the live one." And they went on arguing before the king. So the king gave the order, "Bring me a sword." A sword was brought before the king, and the king said, "Cut the child in two, give half to one and half to the other." But the woman whose son was the live one pleaded with the king, for she was overcome with compassion. "Please, my lord, give her the live child. Only don't kill it." We all know at least some version of this story. Solomon has prayed for wisdom, and it comes right after he is granted that wisdom in a dream. And here they come, each from their wretched situations, to test Solomon's judgment, because that's what it is. And he conceives this clever way to see who truly loves the child, not one who merely wishes to possess it. Like fairy tales and fables, the story verges on the gruesome, and only at the last second is horror averted. Believe it or not, though, this is a story of love. The actual mother would rather the child live as someone else's child than to die for spite's sake. Love, as I have told you over and over again over the years I have been here, is not what we feel about a person. It is to hold another's value as being essential to your own. In my last year of seminary, two classmates who had married during our tenure there were expecting their first child just before graduation. In fact, Donna was pregnant when she was ordained, so we all knew quickly as seminary students that meant the child was preordained. It's great to work with former Calvinists, isn't it? But my point in telling the story is not the joke, is that my wife Wendy and I, went to see her. She was a friend. We had been there all the way through her pregnancy. And Donna told us as she lay there in the bed with her babe in arms that she had often heard people say they would give up their life for someone, but now it made perfect sense. Love is not an affectionate feeling, said C.S. Lewis, but a steady wish for the person's ultimate good as far as it can be obtained. That's a perhaps more abstract way of saying it, perhaps because C.S. Lewis was never a parent, but it contains the same principle. Love is not a feeling we have about something or someone. That's an emotion, and it's something else. It's a form of desire. In many ways, we desire this or that person or that thing. It is ultimately, though, selfish, because though it may fill it life with excitement, it is the desire to have that feeling that makes us want that person or that thing. It is not the person or the thing we want, it is the feeling we have about it that makes us feel all warm and excited. We do not value the person, really. We value the sensation. The great Trappist monk Thomas Merton observed, if in loving we do not love what they are, but only their potential likeness to ourselves, then we do not love them. We only love the reflection of ourselves we find in them. And we all know that feeling. We all know it well. C.S. Lewis, and my friend Donna discovered love is exactly the reverse of what we've all been told by the movies, by the books, by our culture. It is to value the person, not the feeling. In a previous Advent, I lifted up a contrived word invented in the 17th century by English schoolboys, floxa nausa nihil pilification, which is deemed to mean the act of estimating something as worthless. The good news is love is only 4 letters long. It means the act of estimating something as priceless. That raises a question, of course, if we think about it. Do we love something worthy of our love? We have all known people devoted to spouses who were not devoted back, parents who loved children who didn't love them, and vice versa. That is the boilerplate as well of art and opera and literature. Who of you does not have a story deeply felt and still tender to the touch of investing your love in someone, to have it ignored, rejected, even mocked? Do you remember how hard that felt? How deep it went? You still do. I know I do. And it's not always a person. That same spring when Donna had her wonderful little baby, who was now 30-something years old, we were all looking for pulpits, hoping to get a job. Degree in hand, weren't we supposed to now go earn a buck? And one by one, my classmates got their calls to places far away, and I waved to all of them as they went away, and I alone remained behind and waited for a solid year to find a pulpit, as my other colleagues were found far more attractive. So there I was, the very unreverend, very unemployed, overeducated fellow, waiting for someone to say, "We want you." I can still remember the churches that didn't want me. You can remember those people and things. A nice little place in Sioux City, Iowa, Roanoke, Virginia, Rockland, Maine. We went to visit Rockland, Maine. San Luis Obispo, California. Wow. All of them said, "No, thank you." 35 years, I can still remember that. When we invest our hopes of who we are in someone else, something else, to be denied that goes deep. In each one, of course, I saw some affirmation, you're a minister. Some vindication, you're smart. Their yes would be proof I was worthy. Worth. Their no was clearly evidence that I was worthless. I had not read Merton quite yet. When I ponder the attraction, turning to another subject now, when I ponder the attraction of the current leading candidate for the Republican Party, he who shall not be named, it comes to me that what he defends is a worldview that many millions, often people of my own age and perhaps a little older, have identified with and believed in and found their worth in serving. And as they look out upon the world now, as they reach the point in their lives when their work lives are ending, and they see that world to which they gave themselves, in which they found their identity and some of their value, they see it vanishing, and it is vanishing. There is no question. And like illness and age in our personal lives, a certain shadow of death now hovers over their world, the world that they see as important and real. So tell me, what could be more dreadful than your own mortality than to think that the world you were trying to build was being unbuilt even before you die? I can understand the sense of worthlessness, the sense of angst, the sense of fear that attaches to those who see that world that they had believed in seem to come unglued. That's because we all long to outlive ourselves, perhaps through our children, sometimes through our work, sometimes through our nation, our religion. We'd like to think we have given ourselves to something that is larger than ourselves, that will outlast us. This is what proves our worth, to live for and perish for something worthy of our lives, worthy of our love. But what happens when those things, our actual and imputed children, turn out to be as mortal as we are, and when the shadow of death hovers over them as well as us? They rage, as Dylan Thomas put it, they rage against the dying of the light, and we see it on the streets. Some resign from life. They sink into what Thoreau called lives of quiet desperation. Neither of these are places we want to go. And some learn that what they thought was love was not love at all, but need. These are not revelations we welcome or want, and we will put them off as long as possible. And then a few will realize that it is the loving that makes life worthwhile, not the beloved. Pablo Neruda wrote a wonderful series of sonnets, and one of them has this beautiful passage from which I got the title. He speaks of love as something between the shadow and the soul. When I read that, I knew we understood that love is how we connect life and death, how we connect eternity with mortality. It is a beautiful phrase, but it only means something if you've met that moment of despair, when you've seen the shadow, when you've felt the hovering power of death and worthlessness. I will tell you how I know this in two ways. After our third son died at the age of 6 months, the result of being very premature, we were, of course, rather despondent and depressed. It's natural, I should think. If, as Carl Sandburg said, a baby is God's opinion that the world should go on, the death of a baby makes one doubt that very seriously. The worth of life was not self-evident to us for a while. For some reason that winter, perhaps an effort to find something that would give me a sense of worth, I found myself going to this story of Mary. I can't tell you why. I just did. And I found myself wanting to move some of the words around so they weren't so familiar to the ear, so that we could hear them again. The poem is the one you heard the choir sing today. The first word, Magnificat, means magnify. The version I read in the hymn book is my version. It passed muster. I'm gratified. You can read it later if you wish. But I think the reason that story got inside me after that loss was that it reminded me through Mary that you love a child before it appears. You really do. And that being, which is still forming, is something that is essential to your own. And I speak not as a pregnant woman, but as a pregnant father, awaiting a birth. And though our child did not live, our love did not die. And that's the struggle with grief, is that suddenly we have love without a place to put it, an object. And that's when it hit me. Love gives the world its worth, not it ours. We do not obtain our worth from the world, be it a job or a spouse or even a child. It is in the giving of love that we find the worth of our own lives. That's the first story. The second, much less intense. Well, maybe I'm wrong. There came a time a few years ago, and I do mean a few years ago, when in my heart I despaired of my vocation. Looking back, I saw no buildings built, no capitals campaigned, no multitudes gathered, no accolades offered, no offspring of my work, as it were, and felt that sense of not having done the work, a deep sense of failure. And when that comes after you spend, half your life doing it, you don't feel very good about yourself. Despair is almost sensible, and it's also unlivable. I faced a choice. It took a while to understand what that choice was. I don't remember the day, but I remember the moment I decided I am here to love. Remember when I said that the liberal way was difficult? Well, this is it. Having freed our minds from the false gods of success and prestige and power, having opened our souls to insight and wisdom, the only way we can change the world, thank you, Ginger, is to love the hell out of it. As certain dark things are to be loved, says Pablo Neruda, as certain dark things are to be loved in secret between the shadow and the soul, as the plant that never blooms but carries itself the light of hidden flowers. Do you love that passage? As a plant that never blooms but carries in itself the light of hidden flowers. To love without knowing how or when or from where. Straightforward, without complexities or pride. I decided to love like that. I decided to love you that way. I choose to love you. I choose you even when I don't like you. Because love is not liking. It is not wanting to. It is to value something, someone, as being essential to your own well-being. You are essential to me, my friends. I love you because you are you. Because we are all still infants who hold the hope of tomorrow, even if that infant is 99 years old, even when the shadow of death grows over a face that's about to fold into the grave, tomorrow is still on that person's face, and I love that tomorrow. I love you because to love for this man is to enclose you with my heart, if not with my belly, to hold inside that throbbing possibility of your being and say that I will live tomorrow so that you can live tomorrow. I love you because I long to break forth in prophecies of hope that this church, no matter what it is, tomorrow will be good for this world as well as for ourselves. We'll have some kind of light to offer, even if we cannot find it today. I love you because I think spending my life and bringing life to the world is what we are here to do, because when we were born, we saw the world in our mother's eyes and we believed that tomorrow was real. I love you for all those reasons and more, even when it is hard to do it. Even when I don't feel it, I do it. And here's my point. It's not that I love you, it's that you can do this as well. It is a choice. And every day you can choose to love, and every day you don't, the world is worth less and less than it was. You must do this. You must choose love, even on the days when you would rather sail it down the river and say goodbye. You must choose love, even when you would turn your back and fling it behind you. You must choose love for everyone you see, including yourself, because that is what liberal religion is, to choose love straightforward, without complexities or pride, to carry the light of hidden flowers, and to do it every day. I'm done. Love one another, please. And may these words of my mouth and the meditations of my heart be found true in thy sight, thou who art my rock and my Redeemer. Amen and amen.